Thank you, Mariam. The current issue is Iran's nuclear programs. Interesting to ask who shares the Western perception, the obsession, that this is the greatest threat to world peace. And that question is pretty easy to answer. The obsession is not shared by the non-aligned countries. It's most of the world. They continue their vigorous support, outspoken support for Iran's right to enrich uranium as signers of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It's not shared in the Arab world, where the population dislikes Iran for all kinds of reasons that go way back, but does not consider it much of a threat. Now, the population does perceive threats, primarily Israel and the United States. The people I'm talking about, Western commentary keeps to the oil dictators who do see Iran as a threat. This helps explain why the West is so opposed to democracy in the Arab world. If you had any, disregarding the usual boilerplate, if you have some kind of functioning democracy, public opinion has some sort of influence on policy. And the last thing that the West wants is for policy to focus on the threats that are perceived of the U.S. and Israel, and not on the threat that the West is obsessed with, the alleged threat of Iran. Well, secondly, whatever the threat's alleged to be, is there a way to address it, short of sanctions that punish the population and war? Well, there are a number of possibilities. One approach would be to try to revive the Tehran Agreement of May 2010. Then Iran accepted a Turkish-Brazilian proposal to send low-enriched uranium for storage abroad in Turkey, and to have the nuclear powers satisfy Iran's needs for its medical reactors. The U.S. government and the media bitterly condemned Turkey and Brazil for overcoming the greatest threat to world peace. And Obama quickly rushed through new sanctions at the United Nations. The U.S. refused to accept yes for an answer, as quoting Mohammed al-Baradei, the former head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The Brazilian foreign minister was rather annoyed by this, and he released a letter from Obama to President Lula da Silva of Brazil, proposing exactly what Turkey and Brazil had achieved. Presumably, Obama was assuming that Iran would reject the proposal and get some propaganda points. The incident was glossed over rather quietly, but the option may remain, one of several. And there's also a broader approach to the problem, which is worth thinking seriously about. It was actually proposed by the non-aligned conference that met in Tehran last August. It renewed a long-standing proposal which has been vigorously advanced by Egypt in particular for many years, and has such overwhelming international support that Washington has been compelled to express its formal agreement, but only formal reservations that can't do it. It's also supported by some of the most prominent U.S. and Israeli strategic analysts. That proposal would be to move towards establishing a nuclear weapons-free zone in the region. If even steps were taken towards that, it would mitigate whatever crisis is perceived might be a way to end them. Well, an opportunity to carry forward the program arose last December. An international conference was to be held in Finland to move towards implementation under UN auspices. In November, Iran agreed to attend. A few days later, Obama canceled the conference. The core issue, of course, is that the U.S. will not allow Israel's nuclear weapons to be subject to inspection or even discussion. Well, a few days after Obama canceled the conference, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution calling on Israel to join the Non-Proliferation Treaty, 174-6. Joining Israel in voting no were the United States, Canada, several U.S. Pacific Island dependencies. I didn't check, but I suspect that Britain abstained. The U.S. then proceeded to carry out a nuclear weapons test, once again banning international inspectors from the test site. Shortly after that, a meeting took place under the auspices of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. It's an offshoot of the Israeli lobby. The press likes to pretend that they're independent experts. There was an enthusiastic report in the Israeli press. It said that Dennis Ross, Elliot Abrams, other former top advisors to Obama and Bush assured the audience that the president, I'm quoting it, the president will strike Iran next year if diplomacy doesn't succeed. Well, one reason why diplomacy won't succeed is that there's no protest against what's happening. And there can't be any protest for the failure of diplomacy or efforts to seek to end the greatest threat to world peace, for a very simple reason. Hardly a word about these recent events, in fact, virtually nothing, has been reported in the United States. It's another interesting illustration of how free speech can be restricted in a very free society with essentially no government coercion. I haven't investigated, but I suspect that the same is true here. You can tell me. There are other possibilities. None can be seriously pursued unless the powerful are capable of learning to respect the dignity of their victims. If this is beyond their means, impassable barriers will remain, and the world will be doomed to violence, cruelty, and bitter suffering. Thanks.